Hello everyone. For today's video, I'll be making a ring tier list um, for Night Challenge. I will preface though that I feel like there's a lot more debate for rings because um, they're kind of hard to rate because they're kind of good at some points of the game and sometimes they just fall off, stuff like that. And sometimes they are just really not impactful. Anyway, I'll just get started here. And first, we'll start with Tenacity. Tenacity is just damage reduction. It's pretty bad in Night Challenge. Um, and the thing about this damage reduction is it rounds up always. So in the early game, Tenacity is actually completely useless. Like, you find a +1 Tenacity ring, it's actually not doing anything in sewers because it the damage values in sewers is pretty low, and the damage reduction is not enough to make an impact because it always rounds up. So even in the early game, it's pretty useless. In the late game, you're less, you want to get hit less, and your combat is more oriented towards ranged. Um, so even then, like tenacity is pretty bad in the late game as well, even though it does have an impact. Another bad thing about this is it's only really useful if you're low HP. If your hero is incentivized to be at more high HP, like for example, Huntress, um, Huntress, Rogue, you know, there are only a few heroes that really want to stay at low HP, like for example, Warrior or Duelist, so they can activate their shield talents and stuff. But other than that, it's pretty bad. But I think this is the absolute worst ring ever. And yeah, I think it deserves a B tier. Okay, next is Energy Ring. I think Energy Ring is great. Um, Energy Ring basically increases recharging of wands, artifacts, and your armor ability. Just a note, this doesn't increase the recharge rate of weapon abilities for duelists, so just keep that in mind. So, what's great about this is once you have a wand or an artifact, it's pretty great, even at +0. Um, you get to like you pretty much get to spam uh, your wands and your artifacts, and in the late game, if you find like energy ring from an imp, from the imp, um, you can just spam your armor abilities. And if your armor ability is really good, like for example, warrior, shockwave is really OP. You can just if you find a +2 energy ring from the imp, I just put all my upgrades into this so I can spam shockwave. And that will carry you throughout the late game. Pretty good. In terms of early game, the thing I have an issue with this is it's pretty useless um, for like half the cast in the early game. For example, Warrior doesn't have anything. So let's just go through the champions here. So Rogue benefits from this. So Rogue, Mage, and Cleric benefits from this. So 3 out of the 6, so half of the cast benefits from this early game, which is not bad. Like some of these rings are just useless in the early game, like Tenacity. Um, but yeah, so there's an issue with some champions or some heroes, but once you do get either a ring or either a wand or artifact, this is doing good work for you, even in the early game. And I would say it's around maybe less than, maybe it's like 70%. After finishing sewers, you have something. You have like a wand or an artifact. Not really. I don't have the exact numbers, but I think maybe 60 or 70% you'll have something. So I think it's not even bad early game. Um, for heroes that don't have um, like a starting artifact or wand. So given how strong it is in the mid to late game, I think an A tier is fine, but I'd say it's probably like maybe at the bottom of A. I'm gonna be honest, because I think there are much stronger rings than this one. And next we'll go to Force Ring. When evaluating this, I'm gonna exclude Duelist. I'm not gonna count Duelist towards the ratings because on Duelist, the Force Ring is absolutely insane. And like, yes, even though melee damage kind of sucks in my challenge, the just the sheer numbers of this ring on Duelist is it's just unmatched. So on Duelist, it's like you can just focus this ring and it's gonna be an A tier. But if you can't, if you've already invested in like a weapon, then kind of falls down to pretty useless. So it's even on Duelist, this ring's pretty polarizing. Um, on other heroes, so now let's talk about just non-duelist heroes. Um, First ring is not bad. So in the early game, if you discover this horse ring, you basically have no issues with melee damage because it scales with your strength as well. So it's pretty good. Just maybe level it up once, like a +1 Ring of Force is enough to get you through, even in the mid game. So like late prisons, early caves, like this is helping you a lot. And yeah, as long as melee combat is still viable, this is a good ring. When it gets to something like maybe Metropolis, um, melee, there's more of a mix of combat. There's more like range combat rather than melee, but I think melee is still pretty viable in Metro. And it, and then melee just kind of takes a backseat in Halls, but Halls is I think Halls is relatively easy. Anyway, I think this ring is pretty decent, but um, it's also polarizing for non-duelist heroes because like let's say if you already have a +1 tier 2 weapon, I don't know, a +0 force of Ring of Force is only it's not really that useful. So I think it's hard to say if it's usable, then it's in B tier. If it's not usable, it's in B tier. So let's put it in the middle ground here in C tier. Okay, so let's get to Ring of Wealth. And Ring of Wealth is an amazing ring. Um, what it does is it increases drop rates, and after I don't exactly know the logic here, but at some point you'll get drops from enemies that can give you potions, scrolls, even weapons sometimes, and armor. But what you really want is the consumables that this ring drops. Even at +0, this ring is amazing. So much so that I think once, even at +0, once you stabilize, you will win the game. uh, even at +0. And you can retire this ring once you get like your ring from the imp. But like all throughout the game, if you get this early, and even at +0, and you beat sewers and you've stabilized, you will win the game because of the like sheer amount of value that you get from this. You get increased drop rates, so you're more likely to get raw meat. Um, in prisons, you're more likely to get armor, scrolls, energy from the necromancers, and it just snowballs you all the way to the end. And so, yeah, this is a great ring. The loot that this actually drops is not the reason why I think this is a good ring. So yeah, I think this is like an A tier ring. I think it's above the energy ring. I will like to mention though, um, wealth ring, in my opinion, is not really a good ring to dump. Um, it's not good ring to dump because I feel like the early game is it's really important to get um, a power boost in the early game, and upgrading this ring just makes your late game value more. But at the same time, you don't really need that because at +0, this ring is already winning you the game. So yeah, that's why I think +0, like upgrading this is kind of useless, and it's already good at +0. So yeah, so this ring doesn't require an upgrade to be good, and it's just winning you the game once you stabilize. So yeah, it's just very good ring. I think it deserves an A tier. I feel like energy ring. I don't know. I don't think this is an S tier. I think you still have to stabilize, which is sometimes hard to do. I think an A tier is good. Okay, you know what? I'll put energy ring in A for now. So yeah, let's get to sharpshooting ring. So sharpshooting ring, in my opinion, has been nerfed with the thrown weapon changes because the damage scaling throughout the entire thrown weapons has been nerfed. So just the value that you get from this has decreased. Despite that, I still think it's an amazing ring. So kind of like Ring of Force, this auto scales because once you get higher tier ring, or not rings, higher tier thrown weapons, you'll actually get higher damage scaling, which means the sharpshooting ring is doing more for you. So yeah, this is also a good just dump the ring, like a good like upgrade target because like in the early game, mid game, late game, throwies are just really good. Uh, and yeah, and the extra durability it will help you because you'll be turning your old weapons into liquid metal, uh, and you'll basically not run out of any uh, thrown weapon durability if you upgrade this high enough. And I'm not just talking about hunters here. I think all characters really benefit from this ring. It's just throwies are just good reliable damage. I do think that this ring is a little weak in sewers because okay, first of all, some characters don't start with throwies, like Mage and Cleric. Mage and Cleric don't start out with any thrown weapons at all, and they'd have to find like a tier 2 thrown weapon before it can even make use of this. And second, tier 1 thrown weapons are pretty bad. Spirit Bow is not, I guess, with the exception of Spirit Bow. But tier 1 thrown weapons scale 1 damage, just 1 min, 1 max. So it's pretty bad scaling. So I wouldn't recommend using an upgrade on this in the sewers, but once you get to prisons, and especially if you have some distance makers like, let's say, Hourglass or Blast Wave, this becomes an incredible ring. You can just put all your upgrades into this once you have like a distance maker, and yeah, damage is solved for the entire game pretty much. I think, given that, I don't think it's an S tier because it's not doing anything for you in the sewers. But once you get to prisons, it's quite a good ring, and it's an amazing ring. And yeah, I think it goes into A tier. I think the only issue with this one is the sewers. But yeah, even if you get this like from the imp, I still think like it's one of the best rings to get from the imp. So yeah, I think an A placement is good. Okay, now let's get to Ring of Elements. I think this is one of the worst rings in the game. You can see a pattern here. All the defensive rings so far have been really bad. Okay, so let me just explain. Okay, let's explain what this does first. So it reduces damage from magic, and it also reduces the duration of debuffs. I think that's what it does. And here's the thing: most of the damage you're taking is not magic damage. Like for example, in sewers, there's no magic damage aside from traps. I guess let's talk about traps. Traps like shocking trap can be, you know, some damage can be reduced and you'll get stunned for less. So that's kind of a good thing for Elements Ring. But other than that, the main damage is physical in sewers. Same goes for prison. And even then, when you get hit by the robot, DM100, you're usually only getting hit once. So the damage reduction is only getting applied once before you melee it, in which case you want damage reduction for physical. So it's like, what are you even doing with this ring? It's pretty bad. Same goes for the later stages of the game. You got Shamans. You're only really getting hit once, and then usually, but typically speaking, on average, you get hit less than once. I'd even say you get hit once, and then damage reduction is applied, and then that's it. Pretty bad. So yeah, I think this goes in D tier. I don't. I know I've had discussions with this. Some people saying it's in C tier or like even B tier, but I don't think this is a good ring at all. Okay, let's get to accuracy ring. So accuracy ring, it just basically increases accuracy, but if you look at the numbers, this accuracy ring is actually, I would say, it's on average better than the Ring of Fear. Um, so yeah, that might spoil what the rating is for Ring of Fear, but accuracy ring is a decent ring, but it's something that's not worth upgrading. Um, it's pretty good in that most of the time, the very first floor in each region is the hardest region or the hardest floor. Like for example, take prisons. One of the hardest floors is floor 6 because there's more than half of the enemies are skeletons. And I know people will say, well, just surprise attack, right? And Ring of Accuracy is going to be useless. But you're not always in the position to do that. And getting into a position to surprise attack might cost you more than you think. Because it does cost hunger to reposition yourself to, like, let's say a pillar. And you don't always get a pillar. Sometimes you're just forced to melee. And yeah, this is actually doing quite well for you. Um, this is also good for even in the late game. This is doing something for you because um, like let's say there's been a nerf to throwies, thrown weapons, and just boosting the accuracy. I think since thrown weapons have like a 0.5 times increase to accuracy, this is even doing even more for thrown weapons accuracy. But yeah, I'd have to look at the numbers. But the bug fix with the thrown weapons and stuff makes this good even in the late game. It's good for flail, I guess, but I hate flail. Good for war scythe. So like, you know, this is doing more damage for you than you might think. Even so, I don't think it's doing enough. Like I think it's only as good as a C tier. Um, yeah, obviously not as good as sharpshooting ring, even though this applies to both thrown weapons and melee. But better than nothing. I mean, these two are pretty much nothing, but you know, this is still. I'd say it's still unnoticeable. Like the accuracy increase is noticeable. Maybe +0 is a little weak. At +1, you'll definitely notice it. So yeah, a C tier is, I think, a fair um, placement for accuracy ring. Okay, let's get to strength ring. Now, strength ring is interesting because it gives you strength and bonus HP. At +0, this gives you 1 strength. At +1, gives you 2 strength, etc., etc. And this ring is good at different points of the game. In the early game, this ring is insane because let's say you find a tier 3 in sewers, suddenly you can equip it just by upgrading the tier 3. This makes um what you call it, the sacrificial altar much more like much more it provides you much more value than if you didn't have the strength ring because the sacrificial altar is more likely to give you higher tier equipment. So just I think the same goes for the what's that called? The grave that gives you cursed armor. Forgot what the name of the room is, but that one too. Um, in the early game, amazing ring. It will carry you. Given that you have the actual like higher tier equipment, this will carry you like. I think this would make just the early game easy because you can equip higher tier armor and weapons. But in the late game, this is pretty bad. I think once you, um, maybe in late, I would say in late caves, the value that you get from strength just kind of goes down because in caves you get 4 upgrades pretty much. You get 4 upgrades. You get you get 2 upgrades from scrolls and 2 upgrades from the blacksmith, or maybe just one. Like let's say if you smith and you get +0, maybe it's just the 1 upgrade. But um, once you can kind of use the equipment that you want to use, the value of the string goes down. So in the late game, it's pretty useless. The extra HP is nice, but I'd rather get some other ring. Like this is pretty much a tenacity ring in the late game, so I don't know, extra HP. So yeah, this is very difficult to rate. In one hand, I'd say it's A tier in the early game because even the extra strength is relevant, but in the late game, it's like here. But if you've watched my previous videos, I do value the early game power more than the late game power, so I think I put this in B tier. Again, I did mention in the start of the video that the rings are kind of hard to rate because it's pretty inconsistent uh, in which stages they're good in the game. Okay, let's get to Fury Ring. Ring of Fury. Ring of Fear actually got nerfed in the Thrown Weapon update because you can't set up your turn wheel anymore with this ring. And even back then, this ring is quite bad. I wouldn't say it's useless, but it's quite bad. I think for the most part, accuracy ring is just better than the Fury ring, as I mentioned before. Um, there are some things. There's some niche things or like some tech you can do with this ring, but like for example, double surprise attacking enemies if you just line up the partial turns correctly. But it takes quite a while to get there. At +0, this is really weak ring. I think to be impactful at all, you'd need to upgrade this once. But even then, do you want to upgrade a Fury ring? Maybe you just want to upgrade your thrown weapons directly, and that's more likely to get more damage, um, more damage output from the upgrade. So I don't know. This is a really bad ring. Um, I have run through the numbers here before. The ring becomes worth it. So I'm just comparing it to melee. The ring becomes worth it to level up once you have a plus. I'd say +7 just to be safe. Once you have a +7 melee weapon, it becomes more profitable to upgrade the Fury ring. than the actual weapon. And that's just bad because if you have a +6 weapon or +7 weapon, like I'd say like you're pretty set on like your upgrades. You're not gonna have a lot more upgrades. So yeah, I don't know. This is just a bad ring, I think. Especially with the nerf. So I think a C tier is a good place. I don't think it's. I know this. Some people will disagree with me on this, but some people think that this is even worse than these two rings. But I think it's not as bad because at least it's an offensive ring rather than defensive ring. And these defensive rings are quite bad. All right, so let's get to speaking of defensive rings. Let's get to Ring of Evasion. So Ring of Evasion, I'd say, is the best out of the defensive rings. Um, although I will say that it's quite bad in the prisons. It's quite bad in the prisons. Um, and it's quite bad in sewers as well. Um, the reason being is in prisons you're incentivized to defense augment your armor, and evasion ring evasion ring like multiplies your evasion, and if you have less evasion, um, the ring is doing less for you. So in the early game, it's quite bad. I guess it's okay in the sewers. It's still dodging you some hits, and I guess that's impactful. But once you defense augment, like in prisons particularly, this ring is pretty bad. Once you get to the late game, and you've augmented it by evasion, I think the string is, it's decent. I don't think it's like a D tier. So yeah, I think I'd put it in C tier. I think this is reasonable. I think if you try to melee, um, it becomes more reasonable to even melee ghouls if you have an evasion ring, like a +1 evasion ring at least. So yeah, I think C tier is fair. It also dodges like magical attacks, so evasion applies to both physical and magic. So I hear that some people like the elemental ring better, but yeah, I think evasion is just better. Okay, now for Arcana, um, Arcana is one of the more difficult ones to rate because how good this ring is really depends on what you have, which enchants you have, which glyphs you have. Um, so it's really hard to rate. I will say though that this ring is quite bad in the early game. First of all, in the early game, you likely don't have an enchant for your weapon. And you get I guess it's decent for glyphs. However, glyphs like it's just not doing enough in my opinion. Like the glyphs are good because it activates the on hit effects more frequently, and it also boosts your like the movement enhancing glyphs are boosted by a lot, but it's just not doing enough in the early game, you really want output more than like um, movement speed, I guess. But it really depends on which glyphs you have. Like for example, um, things like affection is very good. Thorns, well, thorns is good not against skeletons, but like against everything else, it's good. Although I'm talking about rare enchants here or rare glyphs. Um, Stuff like repulsion is like increases the proc chance. I think what's interesting here too is the entanglement glyph. The entanglement glyph normally, like if you level up the armor, it doesn't actually increase the proc chance of the entanglement, but I checked the code and Arcana actually increases the proc chance of the entanglement glyph. So pretty good with it's actually pretty good with a lot of the glyphs. Um, and so I think if you have an Arcana ring early, it's less risky to um, use a stylus on your cloth armor or something because it also enhances stone enchant or stone glyph. So I wouldn't say it's completely useless in the early game, but it really depends on what glyph you get. Um, and in the late game, I don't know. It's like it's really hard to rate because um, on the one hand, on hit glyphs become weaker in the late game because you don't really want to get hit. So the good glyphs that you see in the early game become kind of like you kind of don't want to use them anymore, like potential um, stuff like that or affection. But the enchants become stronger. Like for example, you're more likely to get an enchant stone in the mid game versus the early game. So in that sense, like Arcana becomes stronger. Um, but I'd say only a few enchants are really good with Arcana. I'd say projecting, Grim, um, polarized, polarized the weapons also become good. However, if you do want to make use of polarized, I'd say you need at least a +3 on this ring. So I don't know, like I wouldn't gamble really on it. You're likely to get it if you really roll for it, but it's not guaranteed. Um, yeah, again, this is hard to rate. I'd say it's in C tier, just because um, it's so hard to rate because when it pops off, and it's really good. But I think on average, it's a C tier ring. I I didn't order this, and I think it's actually like this. It's like before the accuracy ring. This is hard to rate, but right now let's put it here. I think this is fine. And last but not least, it's the haste ring. Definitely not least because I think this is the best ring. I think there's some debates on what the best ring is. Um, it could be sharpshooting. Oh, where did it go? Oh, I can't put it back. Anyway, it could be sharpshooting ring. It could be wealth ring. I don't think anyone disputes energy ring though. Um, I don't think people think that energy ring is the best ring. but it's a strong ring, definitely. Okay, so the reason I think that the haste ring is the best ring, like aside from these two, is first of all, it doesn't need an upgrade to be good. Sometimes all you need is one tile between you and the enemy, and that's just more than enough to um, make this very impactful. And so, for that reason, you don't need to upgrade this. It also increases. It basically increases your hunger, or like your maximum hunger becomes increased because you're moving faster throughout the map. So like both of those traits are already really good. It's almost like a +0 salt cube at +1, and it's theoretically infinite distance because you can just keep running away from non-fast enemies. Um, I don't know what else to say for this because if you haven't tried haste ring, I just say you should try it, and I don't know how else to explain why this is good other than it saves hunger, it provides you free distance at no cost at all, and yeah, I think I would say I guess I'd have to explain why it's not an S tier. It's not an S tier because I don't think it's single-handedly like I don't think getting a haste ring single-handedly just wins you the game. Like if you looked at my wand tier list and my artifact tier list, I put for artifacts I put chains in S tier, and I do think chains single-handedly just wins you the game. It's that strong, and things like the blast wave, corrosion, and fire blast can just generate you so much value that you just pretty much win the game. Um, I guess corrosion. It's not true if you get the one late in the game, but those items just generate you so much value that you win the game. And the same really isn't true for Weathering. You Weathering doesn't really do anything until it drops something for you. And I would say from my experience, you need to stabilize before you actually win with Weathering. And the same is true for Haste Ring. Haste Ring gives you really good utility, good distance, but it doesn't give you output. And if you don't have enough output, you will die. You will die with the haste ring. So yeah, that's the reason why I don't put it in S tier. And no rings are in S tier. I would say. I think yeah, I think tenacity is the worst ring. Haste ring is the best ring. I think that's not really a controversial opinion. Um, I think it's a controversial opinion not to put this in S tier, but yeah, this is the ordering that I have. Um, I think now that we've seen the three uh, item types, the ring, wand, and artifact, I think it's good to discuss the crystal chest room. And just from the tier list, you can see that rings are not good. So 5 out of the 12. I guess I don't know if you can even count this, but let's say 4 out of the 12 of the rings are good to get, and then the other ones are pretty bad. Maybe like if we count the early game, like if we just want to look at the early game, then we want, I guess, haste. I guess 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 of the rings are good. Like I think energy ring is it's it's definitely better late game, but like only 5 of the 12 rings are good. Whereas for the wands, you only have 2 wands that are bad, and the rest are good. I guess three. I'd say 3 of the wands are bad. Regrowth, magic missile, and corruption. And then for artifacts, all of them are good. Except, I guess, except for boots. Like in the early game, boots aren't really doing anything for you. But like, if you just compare that to rings, rings have like 7 out of the 12 are not good pulls. And that's why I just say don't. I would say like you should rarely pick rings for those crystal chest rooms. Anyway, that's gonna do it for me. Let me know if you think haste deserves to be a nest here or something. Maybe something I forgot to mention. And I think that's gonna do it for me. Thanks for watching.